Namaste, Jai Hind, and welcome to this edition of The Right Stand. Now, soon after Independence Day, a huge political fight has now erupted on what should the Teen Murti House and the library, museum and library that's dedicated in that entire area, what should it be called? Should it continue to be called the Nehru Memorial Museum and Library? Or should it now be called the Prime Minister's Museum and Library? But there are many aspects to it, facets to it. Is there a challenge to try and also do away with the legacy of Pandit Jawahar Lal Nehru, as has been alleged by Jairam Ramesh of the Congress party, and there are many other reactions? Or is it just democratization, way beyond just what the Prime Minister's Museum, which has 15 Prime Ministers, in fact the gallery of Prime Minister Narendra Modi is not yet up. It should be up in the coming months. The other question that's there, it's a library. So is that library going to be public use? What is the writ? Who has made this decision? That's sparked a huge furore. Is there an attempt to try and do away with Pandit Jawahar Lal Nehru, the longest serving Prime Minister, the first Prime Minister of Bharat, 17 years of his tenure? Or is it just to democratize and say it's not just Pandit Nehru, we've had 15 Prime Ministers, let's talk about all of them and let it stand for Prime Ministers of Bharat rather than just one person or one particular family or chemistry. So there are two arguments, these are the reactions, and this is how the controversy is brewed. Before we get into the face-off, we should also have the Vice Chairman of the PMML joining us. But first, the political fracas.
The name has been changed because you can see the kind of contribution that has been done by all the Prime Ministers. There is a highlight of around 15 Prime Ministers of the country that has in fact been highlighted.
He is trying to erase the legacy of Nehru, which was created by Lal Bahadur Shastri and Radhakrishnan.
मोदी जी ने कहा जो भी भारत का प्रधानमंत्री है सबको स्थान मिलेगा। अभी तक मोदी जी ने स्वयं का अपना नहीं लगाया। यह है मोदी जी की सोच, सबको साथ लेके चलना, सबको सम्मान देना।
Well, on April 14, 2022, the Pradhan Mantri Sangrahalaya was inaugurated and dedicated to the nation by Prime Minister Narendra Modi. Now, just about a year later, little above the year later, on the 14th of August 2023, this museum and library that highlight the contributions and achievements of every Prime Minister since independence, spanning from Pandit Jawahar Lal Nehru to Atal Bihari Vajpayee and Prime Minister Narendra Modi, the initiative aims to recognize the diverse roles played by these Prime Ministers. And this is also talking about they all worked towards one goal, to try and make the nation stronger. They charted the nation's destiny, authored it, fostering unity and preserving a particularly shared history to understand that across political party lines, each Prime Minister had a tenure, had a time, and in those times, what did they do? Why oppose equal honor and standing for all Prime Ministers is a question. Doesn't the opposition want to acknowledge other Prime Ministers' role in shaping the nation's destiny is another question. And thirdly, yes, Pandit Jawahar Lal Nehru may have resided at Teen Murti House. Has his museum been taken away? Has that floor and that building of Teen Murti House been taken away altogether? Has his name, his legacy, his contributions, has all of that been taken away, removed altogether? Or have the contributions of other Prime Ministers also been added? And has Pandit Jawahar Lal Nehru's name been replaced by Narendra Damodar Das Modi? Or is it just been generalized about the Prime Ministers of the past and into the Prime Ministers of the future going ahead? These are questions, and that's where the face-off lies, ladies and gentlemen. But before we get into the politics of it, joining us now is Surya Prakash Ji, the Vice Chairman of the Executive Council of the Prime Minister's Museum and Library. Namaste and Jai Hind, Surya Prakash Ji. Thank you very much for your time. My first question, the decision to rename NMML to PMML, what is the basis of this decision?
The point is that many years ago it was decided to build a museum of prime ministers. And we had the Teenmurti Bhavan and the estate, which is a 28-acre estate. So it was felt that this is the ideal place because it was felt that we must have a museum which would be dedicated to the work of all our prime ministers. So this was the location for it, and that happened. Then consequent to that, the general body of the Nehru Memorial Museum Library, as it was called then, met on 15 June this year and decided that the name of the institution must change to be in consonance with the democratization, as I would call, and the change of the remit of the institution. So the change of name came about that way, and there was a meeting on 15 June and there was another meeting on the 18th of July when this was endorsed once again, and then it went to the Registrar of Societies, and the name change came about a few days ago.
Right. But the Congress has immediately alleged that it's a deliberate attempt to try and wipe out Nehruvian legacy and erase Pandit Jawahar Lal Nehru's name.
No, I wouldn't like to comment on the political question at all. This is an autonomous institution, and all of us here, Mr. Ripendra Mishra is the chairman, I am the vice chairman, and the executive council has very eminent people here, and our job is to promote this institution. So I wouldn't like to comment on the political questions at all. But I would like to say that given the change in the remit of this institution, the change in name is in a way in consonance with that change of remit. The diversification and democratization of the responsibilities of this institution. The change of name is in tune with that.
But Surya Prakash, when you say diversification, democratization is the remit in the change in name, does this also mean that the museum library encompasses all prime ministers and their stories rather than limited to only one prime minister? Is that what you're trying to say, that it represents all and not just one person?
No, even from the beginning, though it's called Nehru Memorial Museum and Library, it's not as if our library and the activities here is centered just around Nehru. It had very wide ramifications in terms of actually this is the hub of scholarship in regard to modern Indian history, and that is what it is, and that is what it will continue to be. But the only change is the museum. Earlier it was just the Nehru Memorial Museum. Now you have the Pradhan Mantri Sangrahalaya, which is the Museum of Prime Ministers, which showcases the work of all 15 Prime Ministers who we have seen until now in this country.
Some inclusions of Prime Minister Narendra Modi, that gallery, that's not yet been added?
No, of course Prime Minister Narendra Modi's gallery is not ready yet. The work is on. Maybe some months down the line it should be ready, and till now we have the galleries of 14 Prime Ministers, the 15th being Modi ji. His gallery is not ready yet, work is on, and it will happen. Also I must tell you, the Teenmurti Bhavan, which showcased the Nehru Museum earlier, it continues to be dedicated wholly to Jawahar Lal Nehru. You must come and see it, the first floor, as to how we have showcased Nehru's 17 years, his vision for the development of this country, all the major public sector projects, irrigation projects, power projects, planning commission, institutes of technology. Actually, we are very proud of the fact that we are actually quite happy that we have got this opportunity to showcase the first Prime Minister, Jawahar Lal Nehru, and that is wholly located in the first building, that is the Teenmurti Bhavan.
Surya Prakash ji, thank you very much. So Teenmurti Bhavan, where Pandit Nehru actually resided, continues to be the memorial for Pradhan Mantri Jawahar Lal Nehru. But all the other prime ministers are also getting represented, and that's why generalization of the name, not specific to one particular person, it's all the prime ministers of Bharat. Let's get into the political face-off. Charu Pragya, national spokesperson of the BJP, is with us, and Sanjay Jha, political analyst, and of course a lifelong Congressee. Whether or not the party accepts him or not, he is a Congressee. That is something which we are very sure of. Namaste and Jai Hind. Thank you very, very much. Sanjay ji, always a pleasure to have you. And Charu Pragya, after a while, good to have you taking the right stand. But Sanjay ji, एक बात बताइए. What's the big deal? Why give too much of credit and too much of attention to the BJP for this?
Anand, good to be on your program again. I want to keep my answer short because, to be honest with you, I think the Narendra Modi government is far too immature, infantile, and in my opinion, lacking essential moral depth for me to even dignify their conduct by making a commentary. You know, Pandit Jawahar Lal Nehru is considered all over the world as a statesman. I'm not going to go down into making a laundry list of his achievements. We have debated this several times, and if people don't know, they should stop reading WhatsApp forwards. They should go and Google, read a book is what I would suggest they should do.
No, they can go to Teen Murti Bhavan even now, first floor.
Yeah, Anand, let me finish.
Ji.
We just had our Independence Day recently. What is the benchmark where we say that we have completed X number of years? It starts from your first, 15th August 1947. That's how any benchmark begins in any part of the world for any particular historical achievement. Pandit Nehru was India's first Prime Minister. A struggle against the British, freedom struggle. He went to jail. We all know the contribution of Gandhi ji, Sardar Patel, Netaji Subhash Chandra Bose, Maulana Azad, Pandit Nehru. He is India's first Prime Minister after a brutal partition, literally making India recover from the ravages of British imperialism. There is a special place in a nation's history for the first Prime Minister, who, by the way, turned out to be spectacular, extraordinary. Every statesman or a prime minister has successes, has some failures. But the truth is, I think Pandit Nehru literally made the construct of this modern India. You know why I feel ashamed today? And I'm not saying this because, I think the BJP's ideology is so anti-India's constitution, or I believe that politics is so anti the idea of India. That is a separate debate. I would say that, you learn to respect your history. As we have seen with the BJP for the last 9 years, there's an attempt to obliterate that, okay? You see that in the NCERT textbooks, the removal of Maulana Azad, the attempt to dilute Gandhiji and Pandit Nehru. Here is my point, my short point. If Narendra Modi, who I believe has a serious inferiority complex with Nehru, and I want to say it on record, Modi can continue to remain Prime Minister till another 50 years. He will not be even 1% comparable to Pandit Nehru. I'm saying this on record. There is no comparison between where Nehru and what he did for India vis-a-vis, I think, the way Narendra Modi has taken India into the dark ages. Here is my point. If you really wanted to, celebrate the prime ministers, hey, you spent a lot of money on this Central Vista project, right? You could have created a museum there. I give you one example. There is a Lincoln bedroom in the White House, okay? And Abraham Lincoln was a Republican. Guess who was the president in America who actually created that famous Lincoln bedroom, which is a combination of the office of Abraham Lincoln and his cabinet room, etc. Right. It was Harry Truman, who was a Democrat. Have you ever heard of, a Bill Clinton running down Ronald Reagan? Barring Donald Trump, who goes and attacks Barack Obama, there is no tradition of anyone making or ridiculing a predecessor. I think the BJP has reduced the level of, political and public discourse in our country.
Well, on the one hand, आप प्रधानमंत्री नरेंद्र मोदी की दीर्घायु की कामना करते हैं. That's very kind of you. But whether he wants to go on for the next 50 years, next 50 years or not, that's a different point. Secondly, sir, if your short point is so long, then I wonder how long your long point is. Please take that in jest, with due respect.
Can I please
but the other thing is, sir, one bedroom is a different point. 8 acres is a different point. Even now, one whole floor and the first building of Teen Murti Bhavan is still in the name of Pandit Jawahar Lal Nehru. Yes, Charu Pragya.
I made a
Charu
very
Pragya.
different
Ji.
point anyway.
Thank you. Anand, it's great to be on your show after such a long break, and it's always an honor to share the screen with Sanjay ji, and I hope he will extend the same courtesy that I extended to him. I did not interrupt him at all, and my point will be equally short, Anand. You can time me. I understand Prime Minister Nehru is the first Prime Minister of India. He is all our Prime Minister, not just a Congress Prime Minister. But are you trying to say, sir, that Nanda ji, Lal Bahadur Shastri ji, Morarji Desai ji, Charan Singh ji, Rajiv Gandhi, VP Singh ji, Chandrasekhar ji, PV Narasimha Rao ji, Atal Bihari ji, Devagoda ji, IK Gujral ji, Manmohan Singh ji, they are not important. And they did not contribute to the growth of India over the last 75 years. Number two, Teen Murti Bhavan has two wings. One building is still completely and solely dedicated to India's first Prime Minister. We have given him the honor he deserves as independent India's first Prime Minister. It's the second building which houses the remaining 14. So one building for 14 Prime Ministers and one building for Nehruji alone. Also, at the time of independence, there was a Rashtrapati Bhavan for India's Rashtrapati, and Teen Murti Bhavan was for India's Prime Minister. Did any of the other Prime Ministers convert the homes they have lived in into their own personal museums, or has it been done consequently for any other Prime Minister? That's not been done. Today, you are saying that we are deleting his importance from history. We would have done that if we would have changed the layout of the house he actually lived in. That remains intact, sir. I have very recently visited the Pradhan Mantri Sangrahalaya, and I think it is brilliant. It is so beautifully done. You can go and take a virtual walk with any of the Indian Prime Ministers, starting from PM Nehru to PM Modi. You can take a picture with any of the 15 Indian Prime Ministers, and I think that's the beauty of our democracy. So you call him a statesman and you say he's revered all over the world. Of course, he must be a statesman. My voice got disconnected.
Yeah, I can hear you. Go ahead, please.
Get me connected.
Go ahead. Carry on, Charu Pragya.
Anand, let me...
Where we try and tell her that she should carry on. But in the meantime, we'll try and fix her audio. Patch her through. Yeah. We just try and sort that out. The phone line dropped. She could not hear herself, but we could hear her. I'm just trying to tell her the same thing while I message her live on the show. Sanjay Jha, see, she made some points. She's got some more points to make. That's the important aspect, isn't it? No other Prime Minister has appropriated, or their homes have been appropriated to make it a Sangrahalaya. That's the political point. The other point is, Teen Murti Bhavan building number 1 still remains Pandit Nehru's Sangrahalaya. It's not changed. So, had they removed the Sangrahalaya, had they made it shorter, had they not given him the due that he should get, then you could have picked up a book. But as Shakespeare said, what's in a name? Isn't the Congress party making much ado about nothing?
Well, the same applies to the Prime Minister Narendra Modi, doesn't it, Anand? But listen, I mean, let me answer this, because this conversation, frankly speaking, will have a logical end. I can promise you that every attempt being done by Narendra Modi and his government to try and erase the memory of Mahatma Gandhi or Pandit Nehru, because these leaders stood for an India that was truly diverse, secular and syncretic. And how can you expect a former RSS pracharak, a Hindu, who called himself on big billboards in 2014 as a Hindu Hriday Samrat, how can you expect him, despite the constitutional oath he's taken, to really kind of have any compatibility with these great leaders? Narendra Modi is different. We all know that. I mean, let's not...
But one second. Sanjay ji, for all the love, hate, whatever criticism, I'm coming to you, criticism that you may have for Prime Minister Narendra Modi, he is not building a separate Sangrahalaya for himself in a separate building. He's still part of the remaining 14 Prime Ministers. But Jawahar Lal Nehru ji is still separate and still exclusive. So, you have to also cut some slack there. Let Charu Pragya finish. She got interrupted.
I completely agree.
Thank you. Go ahead. Yes, Charu Pragya.
I'm sorry. Anand,
blame it on technology. It was not deliberate. Charu Pragya, go ahead.
For my call to drop.
Go ahead.
Yeah, thank you very much. You know, very respectfully to all the Congress people objecting to this today, please tell me, why is it that the other prime ministers are not so important to you? Why is it that even after naming over 500 institutions, buildings, scholarships, schemes, trophies after the Nehru-Gandhi dynasty, you are still dissatisfied? And it's not like Prime Minister Modi is naming the Sangrahalaya after himself. He's not calling it the Modi building. He's calling it a museum for all the Prime Ministers of India. And like I said, to honor him as the first, he has the whole building to himself. After that, if you're still objecting, with apologies, sir, I think everybody in the Congress is petty-hearted. Petty-hearted. And all the fancy English cannot make up for that petty-heartedness.
And with respect to another museum, what Sanjay Jha had to say, Charu Pragya, what's your response? संग्रहालय बनाना था, तीन मूर्ति भवन के का इसमें क्यों? You are making a Central Vista project, make a संग्रहालय there.
मैंने सुना, बिल्कुल, बिल्कुल मैंने सुना. And the Central Vista project also, Sanjay ji, is for the Indian government. And if you think this current Prime Minister and Cabinet is going to remain in government forever for the next 50 years, I think that's a wonderfully positive thought, but I don't think that's going to happen. Tomorrow, when the delimitation happens, when the number of MPs increase in Parliament, tomorrow as our offices grow and become more vibrant, we need more space. This does not have the thappa of just Modi building all over, and we should stop thinking like that. I think India is growing, India is thriving, and India is reflecting its new progress to the world, and we are not doing away with anything old. We are preserving it as a museum.
And the fact is that I just heard Surya Prakash ji, he said even before Prime Minister Narendra Modi came, when it was the erstwhile Nehru Memorial Museum and Library, other Prime Ministers were still showcased there. It's just that नाम पंडित नेहरू जी का ही था, बाकी सब irrelevant. ऐसा तो नहीं है ना? ऐसा तो नहीं. Is that the case, Sanjay ji?
Can I take a minute more?
Okay, if Sanjay Jha is willing to give you that minute.
Can I take a minute more? Anand, very quickly.
Yes, please go ahead.
Sanjay
yes.
ji, please can I take a minute more?
Thank you, Sanjay. Yeah,
so Anand, you know, thank you. And as early as just last week, I visited the Pradhan Mantri Sangrahalaya. You walk down a corridor with photographs of all our Prime Ministers, one after the other. The date of their tenures are there. You go up after one flight of stairs, you will see the achievements of every single Prime Minister from their early years to their last days in office. I think it's a fabulous place. There is no distinction there between a Congress-led government or an opposition-led government there, sir. It's a beautiful place. And the first building houses gifts to every single Prime Minister of India from various countries, various heads of states from across the world. So it was anyways not dedicated solely to PM Nehru ji, even though his rooms, the rooms of his daughter Indira ji, his office has all been impeccably preserved. Apart from that also there was a lot to see there, and I've seen it before and I've seen it after, and I think it's a wonderfully fantastic change. Okay. Every Indian citizen needs to go and see that museum to understand our rich heritage.
So opening word and closing word to Sanjay Jha in this debate, and my humble and limited point, sir, is that the BJP may vehemently, the BJP may vehemently oppose the Congress and also the Nehruvian policies and Pandit Nehru and many others, but it does not choose to dispose of them. Perhaps the Congress, the charge on the Congress is the Congress not only opposes everything that the BJP proposes, but it also chooses to dispose of whatever the BJP is wanting to do. Case in point is NEP and some other examples, but we won't go there. We don't have time on the debate, but we'll keep it back to on this. So, have you been able? Has Charu Pragya been able to convince you, or you still believe that the name change is done with a ulterior motive, or perhaps with an inferiority complex?
I can tell you it's both. The principal issue here is ideological. The physical structure and the renaming is secondary. And the reason behind that is very straightforward. When Narendra Modi trashes that nothing happened in India before 2014, he's so self-obsessed, he even humiliates Atal Bihari Vajpayee, right? The own BJP Prime Minister who was Prime Minister for 66 years. So he's willing to humiliate Vajpayee for his own self-glorification. That's Narendra Modi for you. Number two, I do believe that prime ministers are different. They all fight for the country, but they have different ways to do it. A prime minister, you know, I can't imagine Pandit Nehru being silent on Manipur for 3 months, or allowing wrestlers to protest and not even giving them a year, or allowing ethnic cleansing to be used in Haryana or creating monsters who go shooting Muslims in trains. It would never happen if I think Prime Minister Nehru was still there. My last point, and this is a humble point, that end of day, Anand, you and Charu are both people alike. The battle in any country is always ideological. India has to make choices. And I do believe that end of day, I would not like any future Prime Minister to name any cricket or football stadium in his name and kind of make a mockery of what I believe is true democratic principles. Let the people decide what they do. I have no problem with the BJP celebrating all prime ministers. All of them should be celebrated. But there was no need to rename the Nehru Memorial. It's as simple as that.
Your point taken, sir, but I am compelled to ask you, sir. You said let the people name what they want to name. The person who built the stadium wanted to name it after Prime Minister Narendra Modi. So it was people who decided it is not Narendra Modi's stadium. He named it. It's a private stadium named by a private entity. My limited point, I'm just placing the facts. If you said that Pradhan Mantri Pandit Jawahar Lal Nehru ji would not have liked what happened in Manipur, so then are you also saying that he would have very clearly said that Raj Dharma has not been followed when aerial attacks were rained in Mizoram under whose rule? And when there were months of blockades and open and brazen 1.5, 2 years of encounters, culling and Paites fighting cookies and cookies fighting zomis, etc., etc., under various tenures of various prime ministers. So the Northeast has been a long-term problem, you and me understand. Charu Pragya wanted to say something. So if he would have not liked Manipur, and I'm sure he would not have liked the handling or whatever happened now, he would have also not liked what has happened over between the 90s, early 2000s, etc., etc. Yes. Charu Pragya, final word.
Yeah. Thank you. Anand, there's a lot that I want to say on Manipur, but I think Prime Minister has spoken about it thrice already. We'll come to that. There are buildings in India called Kamla Nehru. Please tell me her contribution to India as a nation. Also, because we were talking about the Prime Minister's residence being turned into a memorial, the Rashtrapati Bhavan never turned into a memorial. It's still the Rashtrapati Bhavan and every Rashtrapati vacates it after term is over. Why couldn't the same be done for the Prime Minister's house? Why did only one Prime Minister need an entire 8-acre area to be cordoned off? And today, if we are using it to honor all our Prime Ministers, including the first, I think the BJP has done a fabulous job. And it has been done with a lot of grace and dignity.
To compare what one is, there are a lot of people who believe that this is public property, it should not be encroached upon by anybody. It belongs to the taxpayer, the people, the exchequer. It should not have been encroached. Please don't put ideas about Rashtrapati Bhavan. My humble request. Let Rashtrapati Bhavan stay separate. I'm saying it in jest.
I'm just saying the same principles should have been followed for the Prime Minister's
But the point is that you have to also say that Pandit Jawahar Lal Nehru remains not just the nation's first Prime Minister, but also the nation's longest serving Prime Minister. So has he been given his due for that? Many would argue no, because you changed the name.
Yes.
Others would say yes, because one whole building out of the 2 buildings is dedicated only to him. The remaining get into the building number 2. So is that not respect enough? Many would say yes. Sanjay Jha, Charu Pragya, thank you very much for a civil, engaging debate. Pleasure to have you on the show. Thank you very much. Moving on, ladies and gentlemen.